Hey there, everybody. Welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani, and it is Tuesday night, which means it is book club night. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I see a lot of people here on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. Make sure you comment your names and the state that you're from so I can give you guys shout outs, of course. And what are we doing tonight, guys? We are moving forward in the Gospel According to Spiritism book. We are now on chapter 26, entitled Give Freely What You Have Received Freely. And the subcategories are the gift of healing, paid prayers, the merchants expelled from the temple, and mediumship free of charge. So as I mentioned in the last book club meeting, I knew this was going to be a hot button topic for a lot of people, and I knew we were going to get a big response because the subject of whether or not we should be charging for our mediumship services is just so hotly debated. So let's see what Spiritism has to say about it. So we are going to be quoting Matthew chapter 10, verse 8. And it says, "Restore health to the sick, raise the dead, heal the lepers, and cast out the demons. Give freely what you have received freely." So give freely what you have received freely. Jesus said to his disciples, by this precept, he prescribes that one should not charge for something that one has not paid for. What the disciples have received freely was the faculty of healing the sick and casting out demons. That is, bad spirits. This gift was given to them freely by God for the relief of those who were suffering and to help the spreading of the faith. And he told them not to make a business of it, an object of speculation, or a way to make a living. So there's your answer. Short, sweet, and right in a hurry, right? So the answer is no, we're not supposed to be charging for these services. But that's when I say, let's hold up. Let's remember when this was written. Let's remember who it was written for, and let's remember who it was written by. Okay? That made sense back then, right? It doesn't make sense here and now. And so these are the things that I encourage people to do, no matter what religion you are, no matter what spirituality you practice, no matter what traditions you're learning. Bring everything to the future, right? Tradition is good. Rituals are good. Practices that are time, and true are great. But how can we bring them to the future? Can they withstand that, right? So now let's talk about paid prayers. We're going to be quoting Luke chapter 20, verse 45 to 47. We're going to be quoting Matthew chapter 12, verse 38 to 40, and Matthew chapter 23, verse 14. He then said to his disciples, in the presence of all the people listening to him, guard yourself against the scribes who walk around in long robes to show themselves off, who love to be greeted in the public squares and to occupy the best seats in the synagogue and the feasts, who under the pretext of long prayers devour widows' houses. For doing so, such persons will receive a harsher condemnation. Okay, what does this mean, you guys? What does this mean? Jesus also said, do not make anyone pay for your prayers. Do not do like the scribes who, under the pretext of long prayers, devour widows' houses, which means seizing their wealth. Prayer is an act of charity, an impulse of the heart. To be paid for a prayer addressed to God for someone else is to make oneself a paid intermediary. Prayer in this case is a formula whose length is in proportion to the amount of money it yields. Well then, one of two things applies. Either God measures or does not measure his blessings by the number of words. If many words are necessary, Why say only a few of them, or none at all for those who cannot pay? This is a lack of charity. If only one is enough, then more are pointless. So why make them pay? It is deceitful. God does not sell the benefits he grants. Why then would someone who is not their distributor, who cannot guarantee their obtainment, demand payment for a request that might not be answered? God cannot make an act of clemency, goodness, or justice that is requested from the divine mercy be dependent on a sum of money. Otherwise, the consequence would be that if the sum were not paid, or if it were insufficient, God's clemency, goodness, and justice would be withheld. Reason, common sense, and logic state that the absolute perfection could not delegate to imperfect individuals the right to put a price on divine justice. God's justice is like the sun. It is for everybody, for the rich as much as the poor. If the selling of favors by an earthly sovereign is regarded as immoral, it is more legitimate to sell those of the sovereign of the universe. Paid prayers have another drawback. Those who buy them very often believe that they themselves do not have to pray because they have given their money. We know the spirits are touched by the fervor of those who take an interest in them. What could be the fervor of someone who arranged a third party to pray for them by paying for it? What is the fervor of this third party when he or she delegates this task to another, and that one yet another, and so on and so forth? Does that not reduce the prayer's effectiveness to the value of a particular currency? My man, this spirit is, and see, this is another thing too, like when we go through each of these books, you're reading the commentary of the spirits. That's what's being channeled, right? And you will notice a significant difference in vocabulary, in grammar, in concepts, drastically different from the writer, who is human in this particular case. So when you listen to these words, like really listen to it, they're very poetic in some instances. So now we're on the subcategory of the merchants expelled from the temple, right? So we're going to be quoting Mark chapter 11, verse 15 to 18, and Matthew chapter 21, verse 12 to 13. They came to Jerusalem, and Jesus, having entered the temple, began to expel those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves, and he allowed no one to carry anywheres through the temple. He also taught them, saying, "Is not my house to be called a house of prayer for all nations? Meanwhile, you have made it a den of thieves." And when the chief priest heard this, they sought a means to kill him, for they feared him, because all the people were taken by wonder at this doctrine. Let's see what Spiritism has to say about this. So Jesus expelled the merchants from the temple, thereby condemning the selling of holy things under any form whatsoever. God sells neither divine blessings, nor forgiveness, nor entry into the kingdom of heaven. People, therefore, have no right to require payment for them. And this sure as shit is also the donation basket that be rolling around the churches. Don't think that's not what he's talking about. Now we're on the subcategory of mediumship free of charge. It doesn't look like we're going to be quoting any biblical text here. It seems like it's all commentary. So modern mediums, because the disciples also possess mediumship, also have received a gift from God, that of being the interpreters of spirits for the instruction of humankind, to show them the pathway to the good and to lead them to faith, and not to sell them words that do not belong to them, because they are not the product of their personal conception, research, or personal labor. God wills for the life for the light to reach everybody. God does not will for the poorest person to be disinherited from it or to be kept from it by saying, I do not have faith because I could not pay for it. I could not have consolation of receiving the encouragement and the displays of affection of those whom I weep for because I am poor. And that is why mediumship is not a privilege. It is found everywhere. To receive payment for its practice would thus be to divert it from its providential purpose. All those who know the conditions in which good spirits communicate and their aversion for anything that may have selfish interest, and who know how little it takes to keep them away, can never believe that high order spirits are at the disposal of the first who comes along and evokes them for a price at any mediumistic session. Plain common sense rejects such a thought. Would it not also be a profanation to evoke for the price of silver the beings whom we respect or who are dear to us? Undoubtedly, one can obtain manifestations this way, but who can guarantee their authenticity? Frivolous, deceitful, and cunning spirits, and a whole multitude of unscrupulous low-order spirits will always show up and are always ready to respond to any question asked of them with no regard for the truth. Thus, those who desire serious communications must first ask for them seriously after certifying the nature of the sympathies of the medium with the beings of the spirit world. Well, the first condition for attracting the benevolence of good spirits is humility, devotion, selflessness, and complete moral and material disinterest. Alongside the moral issue is a no less important consideration presents itself in connection with the very nature of the faculty. Mediumship could not be, nor will it ever be, a profession. Not only because it would be morally discredited and immediately compared with fortune telling, but because a material obstacle is opposed to it. It is an essentially transitory, fleeting, and changeable faculty whose permanence no one can count on. Therefore, it would always be a very uncertain resource to be exploited because it could fail at the moment in which it would be the most necessary. A different matter altogether is a talent acquired through study and work, and which, for that very reason, is an asset from which it is naturally permitted to make a profit. Mediumship, however, is neither an art nor a talent, and that is why it cannot be made into a profession. It does not exist except through the concourse of spirits. If spirits are lacking, there is no longer a mediumship. The aptitude may persist, but the practice is annulled, and thus there is not one medium in the world who can guarantee the obtainment of a spirit phenomenon at any given moment. Exploiting mediumship is thus to make use of something that one does not really own. To state otherwise is to deceive the person being charged. What is more, it is not they themselves that they are making use of, but the spirits, the souls of the dead, whose concourse is put up for sale. Such a thought is instinctively repugnant. It is this sort of trafficking, degenerated abuse, and exploited by charlatanism, ignorance, credulity, and superstition that motivated Moses' prohibition. Modern Spiritism, understanding the serious side of the matter through the discredit it has cast over such exploitation, has elevated mediumship to the category of being a mission. Please listen to that again, you guys. Listen to that again. Spiritism has made it so that mediumship is now considered a mission, not a profession, right? Not an exploitative service, but a mission to, number one, by example, spreading the word, to number two, obviously, healing and helping and giving light and elevating spirits around you. So that is something I need you guys to kind of think about if and when you want to pursue a particular path or tradition. So if you're interested in Spiritism, if you're interested in these sort of practices, understand that is one of the caveats, that right there. Now, where I disagree is when he starts talking about, where is it? Okay, where he says mediumship, however, is neither an art nor a talent, and that is why it cannot be made into a profession. That the talent acquired through study and work and reason makes it naturally permitted to make a profit, but that mediumship is not that. And that I disagree with. Now, the mediumship as a practice should, in this particular case, according to them, should not be set at a price, should not be charged. But mediumship as a study, as a hidden talent that every single person possesses, that simply just needs a teacher to help bring that out, it says nothing about that. If anything, it denies that mediumship has that innately within it. And that's where I disagree. Mediumship is definitely an art. It's definitely a talent. And I'll go further and say that it's a science. And yes, we all have the capability of mediumship. Yes, our mediumship would be nothing without spirits. We need the spirits in order for the mediumship to work. So if you are not able, and the spirit is not able to commune with you, who cares if you have the capacity to be a medium? But if you can get training to be able to call these spirits in and to be able to tune in at your command and at will, then yeah, it's something to be studied. It's something to be acquired. It's a skill set. Listen, we all are born with muscles. That doesn't make us weightlifters. We're all born with legs. Not all of us are professional runners. We're all born with voices. Not all of us are professional singers. Like, we have the capability. And if somehow on our own we became proficient in that, and we then started doing that as a mission, then of course, don't charge. Obviously, that's your gift. You worked hard to move it along. Yeah, you don't have to charge. But if you are someone who's struggling with that gift, who has a hard time exercising that muscle, you might need to pay someone to teach you that. You might need to get a mentor, and that is okay. All right, so make the decision for yourself, but that is my 2 cents, y'all. Okay, so mediumship is something sacred that must be practiced in a holy and religious manner. If there is one type of mediumship that requires this attitude most completely, it is the healing mediumship. Physicians provide the fruit of their study, which they have made at the price of often painful sacrifice. Magnetizers provide their own fluid, oftentimes even their health, so they may charge for their practices. Healing mediums, however, transmit the healthful fluid of the good spirits and do not have the right to sell it. Although the poor, Jesus and the apostles, charged nothing for their healings that they obtained. So I need to make a distinction here, you guys. When he's talking about healing by transmitting the healthy fluid of the good spirits, you need to understand that is a very specific healing method to Spiritism, and he's not talking about things like Reiki or hands-on healing or like massage therapy or like acupuncture or anything like that. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about full on being a channel of good, healthy spirits. So all you're doing is placing your hands over someone. All you're doing is manipulating that magnetic fluid within that person that you're healing, but you're using the good spirit is moving through you in order to transmit those healing properties. So you're not really doing the work. The spirit is, and you're technically being mounted for a moment. You're being mounted for a moment. Okay. And that's what makes this healing practice so different from a lot of these other ones that we see here in the New Age movement, like Reiki and hands-on and all that stuff. Because there's no use of like symbols. There's no like, fancy systems, but there is a spiritual anatomy that we as mediums understand and we as healers understand. And we know how to utilize our spirits to influence that anatomy and heal that spiritual anatomy. All right. And if you're wondering what all the fuck this means, I highly suggest you take my class. Okay. My spiritual development intensive class. Subjects like these, we go very in depth. I break down the spiritual anatomy, like to break it down scientifically. I break down how these fluids work. I break down what's happening. So this is nothing new. As a matter of fact, this type of healing has been going on throughout history, especially in indigenous cultures here in the Americas. Okay, this idea of being possessed or being mounted by a spirit that then heals someone else, that is not uncommon to us at all. So this is where this is part of the doctrine that many espiritistas that are heavily influenced with Kardecianism, you get what I'm saying. That's the part that they definitely take very, very, very seriously. So anyway, thus, oh wait, I didn't even go that far. Okay. Thus, those who do not have the financial means to support themselves should go and seek resources somewhere else other than in mediumship. And if necessary, devote it only to spare time they have available. Spirits will take into account their dedication and sacrifices, whereas they will avoid those who plan to use mediumship as a means for material gain. Okay. So we are actually done with the chapter. I see chapter 27 is right here. Let me just look how long it is. Yeah, it's pretty long. Yeah, it's pretty long. So I will save this one for Thursday. So we are done with chapter 26. How is everyone feeling about that? Does anyone have any questions about the Spirits book, the Mediums book, this book, Spiritism, Espiritismo, Spiritualism, Psychic Mediumship as a whole, that particular chapter that we just read? Let me know. Take a moment. Let it sink in. Oh, so refreshing. Okay. No, y'all are good? For real, for real? Okay. All right. Well, then beautiful. So if nobody has any questions, if you feel satisfied with tonight's reading, then I want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. It was actually a very short night. Normally we do end around 8. But thank you for hanging out with me tonight. And I will see you guys on Thursday for chapter 27. I will also hopefully see you guys on Sunday when I will be interviewing David Barreto about his new book, Karma and Reincarnation in the Animal Kingdom, an Origin of a Species. And it's going to be a very interesting subject. I'm really excited to talk about that. Also, Sunday morning is going to be our Misa. It is open to the public. However, I definitely want to let you know that the public's ability to comment and to interact for the majority of the part will be turned off, because, you know, most of it is to bear witness, okay? But if you have any questions with regards to any of the services that I have for you guys, any of the free services that I have for you guys, any of the events that are coming up, because there's going to be a few in October and November that you guys are definitely going to want to sign up for. But all that information you can find on my website, www.themagicalsolution.com. Once again, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe.